EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to you. Glad to have you with you for another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, November 10th. This is the second video we're doing of the 2024-2025 winter season, and these will continue every single Sunday throughout the winter months until the last viable threat of snow in the season, which is usually in March, occasionally the end early if we're going to be blowtorch for the rest of the winter or early spring at that point, so we won't know that yet for a while. But I do want to start off with our mentioning, I will not be doing this as long as I did last week. Last week was 33 minutes. It was the introductory video. We're not going to go to as much detail this week, and there's really not a lot of things to do other than update the things that I was talking about last year, things to watch going forward as we head into the winter season. Of course, we're still about a month, or a little more than a month here, almost 6 weeks away from the start of winter. So we're getting close, but our winter programs have already begun. So here we are, and we're going to continue to monitor things going into the winter. Our title sponsor for the Weather Weeklies videos throughout the winter season is Dieter Brothers Heating, Cooling, and Energy. So if you need propane or something or HVAC tune-up before we get into the winter seasons, please give them a call. There is a we start off every week with our where we're at and where we're going. So this is where we're at so far. Obviously, no snow that we have has been seen across the area. This is not completely unusual because it's still the beginning of November. Normal year-to-date here is very minuscule amounts, in some areas none at all, but up here in the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre, usually have some lake effect type snow that starts popping up here and there on average. We haven't had that yet. Still nothing measurable at Scranton-Wilkes-Barre Airport. But the rest, and for the rest of the region for that matter. But this is what average snowfall is for November and December. You can see they're very minuscule amounts here. We get to about 3 inches, a little over 3 inches here in the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area. Everywhere else is under an inch. So you're not really expecting that much in the month of November anyway. You can get, and usually when that occurs at some of these other areas that have 0.2, 0.9, 0.8, 0.6, these are for areas that this is generally later in the month, okay? So it's generally closer you get to Thanksgiving, you start seeing that for the first flakes in some of these years, okay? So it's not usually a snowstorm per se that you get in the month of November, but we do start getting those in December, and you see the numbers go up pretty notably here. It's not going to be peaking yet until we get to February, so it's going to be building up until that point, but we're still seeing a notable increase from November to December in what average snowfall is over the last 30 years. So this is climatology we're talking about here right now, not what we're expecting necessarily. So we're monitoring the transition from ENSO neutral, where we are right now. These are the sea surface temperatures in the equatorial regions of the globe here. Most notably, the ones we're worried about here are from the Indian Ocean all the way through the maritime continent, Indonesia and those areas, all the way through the Western Pacific. And we're watching the progression of this because this will determine our background state. Okay, right now we're in ENSO neutral. We were expected to be in a La Nina already. As we talked about last week, this can has been kicked down the road, and here we are on November 10th, and we're still in an ENSO neutral, very solidly in an ENSO neutral, but mind you. Now, everybody was expecting a transitional La Nina by this month. Well, we're not there yet. So there's some skepticism. So I'm going to show you this chart every single week and see where we are. And the change from last week is the most important. This is what we're looking at on a week-to-week basis and see where we are. So there is no movement toward La Nina right now because, and actually the western region, Nino 4 and Nino 3.4, actually warmed from the previous week. And we got cooler near the Peruvian coast in Nino 1 and 2. So the western portions, and I'll show you that one in better detail in a minute, but these have warmed from where they were last week. So we're not really making progress. And this has a lot to do with the westerly wind burst that was tropical forcing induced that I spoke about in last week's video that has kept this from transitioning to a La Nina. Now, in a La Nina, you have the paintbrush La Nina, right? This is what a typical La Nina does, okay? You have colder air in the Pacific Northwest, north central United States, and you're kind of milder and wetter over here in this region during a La Nina. But this is a paintbrush La Nina. There's no two La Ninas alike, and we saw that here just not last year, but the previous 3 years. We had 3 consecutive years of a La Nina. We had a very lucrative first year La Nina, and then the second one was like not so good as far as snow is concerned, and then the third one was like really nothing at all. I think we had like 5 inches the entire year. So, here locally where I'm at here in the Lehigh Valley. So I mean, there's going to be changes depending on what kind of setup you have in a La Nina. There's no paintbrush La Nina that says, okay, well, this is what it's going to be. Okay, and it's no surprise here that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration (NOAA) put a outlook out that is a paintbrush La Nina. They didn't really change anything here. See that? Cooler up here, milder and a little bit wetter here down here on the southeastern part of this, but see, that's the same thing. So we're generally looking at the same thing that they project as being a paintbrush La Nina. So it's probably not going to work out exactly this way, but in fairness to what they're doing here, this is a probability outlook. So from a probability standpoint, I can see what they're doing here, and this isn't people see this and say, oh wow, it's going to be above average the whole winter. That's not how this works. It's not how this works. There's going to be intra-seasonal changes throughout the winter, and you might have a week where it's mild, and then you might have another week where it's cold and snowy, and it's going to be a back and forth thing. I think you're going to see that a lot this year, where you're really not locked into any particular pattern for very long periods of time. You might be for a couple days or a week, but you're doing this. What we're doing right now with this transient up and down stuff, don't be surprised if that continues throughout much of the winter. As a matter of fact, especially if we don't go into a La Nina and we stay in ENSO neutral, that's going to be more variable in that case as well. Here's where what the ENSO regions mean. Okay, we're looking at these areas right in here, and you see this this area is the area we're looking at. It's about 5 degrees north of the equator. Okay, and all these different regions are the different ones I was talking about. Nino 4 is out here in the yellow. Nino 3 is in the red. Nino 1 and 2 is by the Peruvian coast, and then there's this part in the middle that kind of overlaps both 3 and 4. And that's along this is lined up here. So it goes from it starts out all the way out here at 120 east is where you're, well, actually I didn't take it out far enough, but 120 east is all the way out here, and it moves eastward from there. So we're actually looking at the Nino regions being from about 160 east all the way to 90. Or well, excuse me, 160 east and 90 west. That's the areas of the Nino region. So you can see by the blues here, they're light blues, but blues nevertheless. This means that they're cooler than average waters. Anything that's in yellow or orange or even red, those are above average anomalies compared to what they should be, and it's globally here. But we're focused right in here on this area right here. The most notable area of cooling is right in here. And that is makes this an east-based La Nina right now. But it's not a La Nina yet. It would be at least east-based La Nina if these anomalies are a little bit stronger. The problem out here in Nino 4 is these values out here in Nino 4 are actually positive right now. They are in ENSO neutral also, but positive neutral, plus 0.2 degrees Celsius. So this is holding up the transition to La Nina because we keep getting these westerly wind bursts that are pushing all this warm water eastward, and that is not allowing for this to really take full effect. Okay, so we had that westerly wind burst that kept this where it is now. So the whole point here is we are in an ENSO neutral. Everybody's expecting a La Nina. We may eventually get there, but it's not looking like it's going to be doing it anytime soon. So this can just keeps getting kicked and kicked and kicked. If you remember, in the summer we were supposed to have a La Nina summer active hurricane season, and that didn't really happen, right? Now we did pick up on the hurricanes eventually, mid-September through mid-October, but we never got to La Nina, and so we didn't have a hyperactive hurricane season because of that. The same thing was said that we probably would be in a moderate La Nina, as a matter of fact, and we're not. If we're going to get to La Nina, it's going to be by the skin of its teeth, barely. So not very confident in that. The reason we know that is because we look at the model projections of ENSO going forward, and we're right here in this ENSO neutral state. Notice that most of the models here are not taking it into a La Nina now. Most of them are keeping it in an ENSO neutral. So this could, there are some that do, especially the dynamical models here in the red. They do take it into about negative 0.6 degrees Celsius ONI, which it would qualify for La Nina. La Nina starts right here at this threshold, this point forward. Everything from this point down is a La Nina. Anywhere from this point up is a ENSO, or excuse me, El Nino. Anywhere in between these two lines is ENSO neutral, and that's where we are right now. So this is important, and I'm kind of harping on this and ad nauseum, because this has implications of exactly how our pattern will go. Okay, so these winter outlooks, any winter outlooks that are written, whether you saw this one or whether you saw something privately shared, were all based on the premise of La Nina being reached. If it's not being reached, it's going to change the ball game a little bit, or it could. All right, this is not going to be so. Doing a winter outlook, I mean, we don't do those anyway. We don't do seasonal stuff. I stick to 5 to 6 weeks of a lead time for a reason. But and even this year, even more so, when you get into an ENSO neutral pattern, it needs to be more variability. It can really go either way. You could have a really snowy year, or you could have a snow that's nothing to write home about. Okay, and it's a lot of intra-seasonal variability, more so than you would have in a La Nina. La Nina, you have southeast ridge influences where you have you have a big high out here, right? And then you have the southeast ridge pushing up against it, and it gives us some warmth here, and that's what they're expecting with the La Nina. If that's not reached, the southeast ridge is not as much of a player in our weather. It could at times, but it's not going to be the dominant factor. And then you have to look at some other things that will help or hurt your chances for snow throughout the year. And it's a neutral pattern. Again, this is a paintbrush outlook, but it's a little bit different of a look. Okay, you get more cold intrusions here over the northeast United States. It also promotes a little bit better, a little more blocking over Greenland. So there's some factors in this that could change the ball game from what you're reading out there that are in the winter outlooks that are suggesting we're going to a La Nina. If we don't make it, that changes the game a little bit, and all bets are off. So you can read them for entertainment value, these winter outlooks, but just don't take them. You take them with a big grain of salt, because there's going beyond even 5 to 6 weeks is a stretch for us. I mean, we're projecting mid-December right now. Okay, and I think it's going to go a certain way. Do I know that? No. I mean, the next couple of weeks, I'm pretty confident in. Okay, but after that, the confidence. That's why you see on our chart we have a confidence scale, right? And the confidence in you get to early to mid-December is like low, very low. It's not very good confidence at that point. And you got people out there trying to project 3, 4, 5 months in advance, and just not going to happen in a winter like this with so much variability. One of those things that we're talking about with variability is the teleconnections running the show. When you're in an ENSO neutral pattern, things like the North Atlantic oscillation or your blocking in Greenland will play a role. Okay, if you have this, you'll get more cold intrusions, more snow chances, more East Coast storm chances, right? If you don't, it could be mild. The Arctic oscillation, that's your cold air source from Canada. Is that negative predominantly, or is it positive? That's going to make a difference too, as far as how much cold air we can tap into. The EPO, that's also another factor. There's another teleconnection we look for on a shorter term scale. But I will tell you, this is the premise of this is for an EPO, negative EPO, getting all those cold and snowy conditions into our area, is having a big high pressure out here in the Gulf of Alaska. And I'm a little skeptical about the EPO dominating this year just because of this cold pool that's up here. If you see on the, again, this is the La Nina area, right? But see these cooler than average temperatures are up here in the Gulf of Alaska. That doesn't typically promote a blocking ridge up in Alaska. You could have that at times, again, in short bursts, but I don't think it's going to be like 2013, 2014, where it just dominated for months, and we were getting seriously cold temperatures relative to average and a lot of snow. Not a big, no real big snowstorms, but we had a lot of storms that were like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches and just piled up on each other. And the frequency of events that year was nuts, and that was because of the EPO dominating that winter. I don't know we're going to dominate. We will at times go to a negative EPO, but this blocking high in this area is probably not going to be there as a dominant trait because of the cooler temperatures that are surrounding Alaska right now. Okay, so what do we look for then with other intraseasonal things? Probably the biggest driver is going to be your tropical forcing and convection along the equator in this entire region. We're going all the way back to Africa, the eastern coast of Africa, and going all the way across to the Peruvian coast. This whole area is what we're monitoring for tropical convection. Wherever the best tropical convection exists will contribute to latent heat release processes, which affects the jet stream and the ups and downs of where the ridges and troughs are positioned. So the idea here, and here's that look at that, where these different phases are. right? Starts all the way at phase 1 here in the western, I guess this is off the east coast of Africa, and then 2 and 3 are in the Indian Ocean. 4 and 5 are the maritime continent. This is where most convection typically spends in a La Nina, but again, we're not a La Nina, so we've been having this continuing this far all the way up to phase 8 and then kind of stopping and collapsing. That's the trend we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Is that going to continue into that same trend? Going to continue where we cycle through and these waves continue to go progress all the way through these phases, which is a little better when you get here in 781. These are in winter. I don't care what background state you're in, are pretty good, especially phase 8. Phase 8 is like the mecca, so to speak. So we are in phase 8 right now, actually, of the Madden-Julian oscillation. So it looks like it wants to go, it's been cycling through these phases and gets to phase 8, stops, and then resets and goes back to, and reemerges out here in the western, or maybe eastern Indian Ocean, or the maritime continent. And that's where the highest heat content is. The warm pool, so to speak, is actually sitting, that I showed this last week, but the warm pool of water is actually sitting out here in 678 when it should be out here, okay, in a La Nina. So because it's farther east, that could have implications downstream on what we see as far as the ridges and troughs and where they are. Here's an example of the Madden-Julian oscillation right now. Again, we're in phase 8, and this is where the start is. The left is the GFS extended, and the one on the right is the Euro extended, or Euro Weekly. Used to call it the Euro Weeklies, right? So you have all this the transition and going through the circle of death here, where it's a null phase, reemerging in 4 and then 5. You can see that both of them are doing that. Now I want to. This stops here in early December. Now the idea here is that this is eventually just going to keep continuing. Maybe does one of these numbers and collapses again, right? That would be that's taking this out far in advance here, but they're both generally doing the same thing, where they take it through the maritime continent and then emerge it into phase 6 eventually. The European model is a little slower with that movement, but they both spend about a week in phase 5. Now I'm going to show you the difference. I'm going to highlight phase 5 here. Phase 5 of the maritime continent means a whole world of difference, whether we are in an ENSO neutral pattern at that time or a La Nina. And this is why I've been kind of harping on this whole thing here. Here's what it looks like in a La Nina, phase 5. This is a milder phase. We're right here, right? So you have a milder phase, milder over New England, milder over the mid-Atlantic, okay? Milder right along the western coast of the United States, kind of tempered in the middle, okay? So that is what a phase 5 in a negative ENSO in December, which is a La Nina in December. That's what it looks like, okay? Now let's go over to an ENSO neutral. If we remain in ENSO neutral at that time, which we are right now, this is what it looks like. Well, okay, now it means something different. Now you got ridging here along the west coast, but here, look at us. We are below average. In temperatures, you got some blocking over Greenland here. I mean, this is not a bad setup. And again, this is a neutral ENSO in December in phase 5. Now, you're only going to spend about a week there, and before it moves to phase 6, and it kind of flips there. We go to phase 6, it's the exact opposite. Better or colder in a La Nina, and so neutral turns warmer. So since you only spend about a week in each one of these phases or so, you're going to have these transient ups and downs, which leads me to believe you're going to have like a mild week. And not crazy mild, but milder than average, right? And then you have a colder week with the chances for snow. And you're probably going to repeat this pattern a lot as we transition through these phases, as it keeps moving. Because each phase means a different thing. You get to phase 8, again, it doesn't matter if you're ENSO neutral or... and it probably wouldn't be till January anyway. But, if you get to phase 8, it's a good pattern on no matter what background state you're in. So eventually you may get there. We'll see what happens. I mean, this only goes to December 10th here. So I don't want to speculate, especially beyond 2 weeks on the Madden-Julian oscillation. It gets a little hairy, and these are going past 2 weeks. Obviously, this is December 10th. That's not 2 weeks. So that's the second week of December. I do think, based on this setup here, and if you do get in phase 5 as shown, that gives us the opportunity for some events, snow events possibly, in the second week of December or toward the middle of December. That's kind of what we're targeting right now. Because right now, over the next couple of weeks, this is the next 2 weeks here in the European ensemble, and I did use the GFS ensemble. This is the downscaled MOS, projected high and low temperatures here over the next 2 weeks at Lehigh Valley International Airport. Normal high hit this location today is 56. It goes down to 50. That's what this red line is. It goes down to 50 by the time we get to November 25th, which is 2 weeks from now. Okay, so or 2 weeks from tomorrow, right? This is a 15 day, but still, you see that the steady drop here. But look where our temperatures are relative to that. You're going to be above average, or on the above average side of this, not by a whole lot. We're not going back to these upper 70s and 80s like we're doing before, like super anomalous warmth, but we are going to have some. We're alternating basically from near average to slightly above average, near average to slightly above average. So when you have a cool down, so to speak, you're only going back down to near average. It's not like we're going back to, we're getting the 30s and we have snow threats. We're not doing that. Not yet. Okay. Longer down the line, it looks like once we're targeting actually the middle of December, second week of December onward, we have near to slightly below average temperatures, expecting this, with this transition to phase 5, and that we will still be in an ENSO neutral. Again, if we're not an ENSO neutral at that point and we are in a La Nina, it's going to be a different set of circumstances, and that's why it's important to follow the background state to see where we go. But again, beyond 2 weeks here is going to be kind of crazy, so we don't have any winter storm signals, not yet anyway. This is Wilkes-Barre Scranton Airport, just to give you an idea. They do have some, they out here in like around Thanksgiving, late November. There's the opportunity for maybe some lake effect stuff. There's not a big signal here, but once you get into the second week of December, you can see, and toward the middle of the month, you're starting to see some jump ups here in snow, and that's going to be concentrated in these areas here. This is the outer range. This is the second week of December, and it stops here. If you go beyond that, it could be conducive for snowfall as well heading into Christmas. We'll see. But if you're going to put a signal, it's going to be somewhere probably out here. But this is too far out right now to really take seriously. So we don't have any winter storm signals in our long-range outlook. But if I'm going to target a time frame to where I think we can get our first snow for not just Wilkes-Barre, but for more of the region, it would be probably not until that second week of December. Now, you can have lake effect before then. You can have some minor systems to give you some snow before then, a little bit of snow here and there, just some mood flakes, whatever you want to call it. I don't think we do have November projected below average snowfall. We do have near average, however, in December. So we'll see how this plays out. Again, near average is not a lot, but we'll see where we go from here. But this is what we have in December. That's what near average is. It doesn't have to be a ton of snow, but we can certainly get some if the progression of the Madden-Julian oscillation, which is going to be an intraseasonal variability thing, connects with some of these other teleconnections. Do we have a negative NAO at that time? Do we have a negative EPO at that time? Are we still in an ENSO neutral where this could even happen? There's a lot of questions we have to find out and make sure that this is going to be behaving like it's projected to be right now. Again, this is going to the outer limits of the Madden-Julian oscillation projections, so they can, once you get beyond 2 weeks, it gets a little fuzzy. So we'll see how this transpires in the next couple of weeks, and that's exactly what we're doing in this video. We're kind of just updating. Hey, here's where we've been, here's where we're going, and this is what it looks like. Are we trending in this direction? Are we trending in a certain direction, or for a pattern change? A lot of people speculate about the end of November being a pattern change. I do think it's going to come down to about near average for a little bit during that one of those weeks there. I think the fourth week of the month is we're looking like a near average week, which includes Thanksgiving or the pre-Thanksgiving time frame. I just don't see it being a pattern change to the point where we're going to get cold and snowy and all that stuff. Maybe northern New England, not here. Okay, not here, not yet. I do think we're going to target the second week of December to mid-month time frame for something to just kind of follow and see if that has any weight going forward. But a lot will be depending on this and the progression thereof. So we are having discussions about this in the premium forum. We do this every Monday and Wednesday in addition to the Friday public long-range outlook. I release the long-range in there. We do model analysis before any winter storms. We also have the text alert program that started on November 1st. Some members got their first texts already yesterday. It was for rain. Thank goodness we're getting rain at some point today, later today, and overnight, because we certainly need it. But we sent alerts for that yesterday to some members of that program, and the winter text alerts will go through the end of the season. So it's just one low price. You can check that out here at it's scrolling across. It's been scrolling across the top of the top bar here in yellow. It's throughout the entire video. Go to that website, our website, and go to the winter weather alerts, and it'll take you to that. And you can sign up for the alerts and the premium forum, and we cover all of these areas right here. Any of those counties in green is what we cover. Okay, so if you live in one of these counties and you're looking for the text alerts, we can serve you. Okay, outside of this, I had some questions last week after I did the video. Hey, I live in Western Pennsylvania. Can you do that there too? We have no plans to expand because we have enough to deal with here. Again, we're a private consulting firm, so we're not. It's not something we just like run a Facebook page and say, hey, let's start covering Western PA now. Well, we're not set up for that. If the business isn't set up for that, so that's why we don't have that. So let me just summarize. The ENSO neutral state is what we're in currently, but when and if La Nina develops will be critical to the long-range forecast, as I described. I mean, this is going to be a big difference between Phase 5, if you're an ENSO neutral or you're in a La Nina. What kind of teleconnections do we have to go with that at that time? These are things that we're going to be monitoring, but the ENSO neutral state where we're at now is where we will remain in the near term. Milder overall November is expected with a transient up and down temperature pattern, and we just saw that in the, it's not going crazy warm again, but you're going to from alternating between slightly above and near average going forward through pretty much the end of the month. Once you get that fourth week of November, I think we have a near average week. I'll say the 22nd through the 28th in that time frame. I think that's what we have on our long range in our website. But overall, you're going to see this like this, right? Not really below average just yet. No foreseeable signals for snow currently, but we're preliminarily targeting mid-December, and that could start somewhere in the second week of December, might be just after mid-month, but I think that's when we're targeting our first snow event across the region, and we'll see how that transpires here for the next couple of weeks. If it still maintains or if we kind of flip, go in different directions, that's very possible, but again, whether we're in a La Nina or an ENSO neutral is going to be a big part of that, and also whatever teleconnections to get support at that time, whether it's be the NAO, the AO, the Western U.S. ridging PNA. It could be a lot of different things involved in this. So we'll see where we are going forward the next couple of weeks. If that still looks good, we might run with it. But right now we have no true winter storm signals out there that we can identify. But hopefully that changes here for you snow lovers here in the next couple of weeks. I'm EPAWA meteorologist Bobby Marchus. That is this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, November 10th. Join us again next week. We'll provide another update of where we're going and where we've been, so we can continue to follow this cutting into the winter season, which is now about 6 weeks away. Take care.